Are the Badgers getting enough respect as the season approaches? Are the predictions justified? We're under 2 weeks out from the start of the season, and our preview rolls on. I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, Nick Osen, Badgers beat writer for 247 Sports, joins us to go through some final takes on fall camp in Platteville. And we asked the question, is Luke Fickell and his staff getting enough credit for what they've done to improve this team? Are the media predictions right for where we will finish? We move into the last couple weeks of our season preview and get back into our weekly superlatives with a season preview edition. The Know Your Foe series continues with the Purdue Boilermakers, where the Badgers will try to make it 18 straight wins. Yes, you heard that right. 18 straight wins over the Boilers. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, whatever, so you know when we make new content. Justin, we're under 2 weeks out, man. The excitement level is got to just be growing with you. How are you? How was your week?
Yeah, I'm just ready to be done with the offseason at this point. I want to watch real football. Even the practice didn't do much for me. It was great to see the guys play when I was down there, but I'm like, no, I want to see a game. Like, this is driving me nuts at this point. I need to see live football. I need to see some like end game here where we get a feel for what this is.
All we have right now is preseason NFL, which I just watched Tanner Mordecai have a pretty solid drive. So that's looking good, you know. Back with us once again, joining us from 247 Sports.
The Bucky Report proudly welcomes Nick Osen from 247 Sports.
Nick Osen, always a good friend of the show and frequent guest now. How are you? Welcome back, Nick.
Man, that never gets old. Guys, I'm doing great. I kind of feel like Justin, which, by the way, I got to meet Justin a little bit at that practice. I know he's been super excited. You guys, I honestly think I want to give you guys credit. We're going to talk about the staff and camp and things like that, but I think you guys are a couple great representatives that even build the excitement a little more for the fan base. So I think it's going to be a blast. I know we're getting close. I'm starting to work on game preview stuff rather than camp stuff, which is a little bit crazy, but really, really excited to dive a little bit deeper with you guys tonight too.
Yeah, so we're gonna have some fun tonight. We're gonna talk through some superlatives, just some fun stuff. And then next week, I want to give everyone a preview. Next week, we're gonna do a full season sort of preview, kind of culminating everything. We're gonna go game by game. We're gonna try to have Ryan on the show. I think he's gonna be joining us. We're gonna do a game by game, just kind of wins loss, right? Everyone's gonna make their predictions, so we'll officially lay out our predictions. Mine's sort of beginning to change a little bit, so I'm just tune in next week. I think it'll be a fun one. And then, of course, kind of the bigger superlatives, right? Just like the MVP, that kind of stuff. So we're going to do all those next week, leading up to, of course, kickoff on the 30th. Let's start here, though, Nick. Obviously, you've been to pretty much every practice, right? I mean, you've been pretty much every single one. You've seen this team quite a bit over the last few weeks. What are some of your big takeaways? Obviously, we talked about fall camp on the show last week a little bit, but we want to get your take. What are your big takeaways? And kind of how maybe what you saw changed any expectations that you have?
Yeah, absolutely, Rajeev. So, I was fortunate, like you said, pretty much every practice. I'm very proud between spring and fall. I got to every single one that was offered, even the open fan one. So that was great. It's funny, good timing. I'm actually working on like a last 3 thoughts type of thing as we move past fall camp. And so I would say a couple things. I'll maybe say 2, that I really felt good about. And then 1 I maybe didn't expect. Guys, I think the quarterback room is in a good spot. Obviously, the battle is done for now. Like it was kind of put out there. Of course, Tyler Van Dyke's going to be the starter. And man, the progression from him has been almost perfectly linear in terms of a really good, solid, positive format that I've seen really since the spring. I feel like it's the 3 C's. I've seen more confidence, more command of that offense, and then the chemistry has really grown with the receivers. Obviously, The run game is something we're all super excited about, and I think it needs to be the backbone of this offense. I'm sure you guys agree with that too, but I'm just seeing a player, I will say, certainly since that kind of became public, but even the second week in Platteville, I'm seeing Van Dyke play with a little, maybe less weight on his shoulders. You know, he's still got that chip. He talks about going for some revenge, but I just felt like I was watching that younger TVD that we maybe saw at Miami. I don't know if, Justin, if you saw that a little bit too in those glimpses, but that was a major takeaway for me for sure.
I think that it's to an extent always been there. I think the coaching and cohesion going on within the teams that he's been on has been a big negative for him.
Mm-hmm.
Ecosystem, you know, the Ryan Herring's buzzword is such a huge factor when it comes to this. It is really difficult to have a quarterback get bounced around to different coaches, but even more so if it's not necessarily the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he fit with Rhett Lashley. Like that was pretty obvious that it was the right fit for him. I just don't think he fit with the other guys. And I think that he kind of became the scapegoat for everything that went wrong. Now, it wasn't perfect, but if you have somebody that you don't connect with in the right way between a quarterback and your OC, this is kind of what you get. Like, it's the same thing we see in the NFL. You can see an amazing quarterback go to a team that doesn't know how to quite develop him, and he'll never realize his potential. And the same token, if you get put into the right situation, guys play well above their current talent level. Like, look at the 49ers with Purdue. Prime example of that. Nobody was expecting him to be this type of quarterback in the NFL. He fell into a really good situation with a really good coach that was able to develop him, understood his shortcomings, understood what would work best for him in that situation, and they maximized him. And I don't think that that's what's been done with Van Dyke the last couple of years in Miami.
Seems to always just work that way, by the way. The 49ers just always, whoever just plays there just happens.
I mean, they did have a long gap in between there.
I mean, geez. Nick, I want to come back to you on one thing you said. You mentioned the quarterback room and what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, of course, TVD did get announced as the starter this week. Justin and I were on Locked On Badgers talking about that. I'm really glad that finally came out. Let me ask you, though, Nick, about the room in general. Like, so beyond Tyler Van Dyke, when you look at Braden Locke, when you look at Mabry Mettauer, how do you feel about those guys? How did those guys do, in your opinion, throughout camp?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I felt like Braden Locke, he really did push Tyler. I don't think that was, you know, TVD just being nice and saying, yeah, you know, he's got a bright future. He really pushed me. I think that was very, very sincere on his part. I think that Locke, I think he got a little bit more athletic. I think he got a little bit faster. I think he got even quicker with his reads. And frankly, I saw the velocity and a little bit of arm talent get better too. I think for him, you know, it's tough that, like, you can't necessarily just quickly change height. There were some batted balls that I think hurt at times at practices. Mabry, I think he's going to be pretty legit. I mean, there's the freshman transition, and of course you're going against college guys and things like that. But some of those throws that he makes, I'm thinking of a couple like opposite side in tight coverage, falling away. I think he's going to be legit. And guys, I will also mention, I mean, we'll see, you know, what his career looks like, but true freshman walk-on Milos Spasojevic, he really impressed at times too. Like, that guy is a talent that could be a scholarship guy from what I could see, you know, just in terms of arm talent. He's got a very live arm, seems to be picking things up pretty quickly too. So I feel good about the room, Rajeev, quite honestly. I know that I was watching that Big Ten show, and DiNardo kind of like alluded to the assumption that there'd be another transfer next year. Like, he just kind of put that out there himself. And I'd push back on that a little bit, but I also just wanted to note, because I know we've got a loaded show, I want to make sure I mention and give credit to a couple staffers in terms of really their development at their position groups. Inside linebacker, defensive line. Those were two spots, guys. I wasn't sure exactly what I would see, what I would expect throughout fall camp. I've been really impressed by growth. And then, of course, maybe transfers within those groups, like a Tackett Curtis coming along late, Elijah Hills impressed me much more in the fall than he did in the spring. You guys know what I think about Brandon Lane in a good way. So just wanted to mention those groups as well, kind of moving past fall camp.
Yeah, it's good that camp was good for the most part, right? I mean, I feel like the news coming out of there was great. By the way, Nick, you did a great job. I love the Nick's notebook stuff. Reading like it was just line after line. It was good because you can kind of quickly breeze through it and see who was mentioned, who wasn't, and then dig in a little more. So certainly always appreciated that. This is becoming a regular comment that I'm going to keep putting up every week because I love it. Will Hanna is giving us his menu for the night: smoked salmon dip, garlic herb crackers, giant mushroom caps stuffed with garlic butter king crab, and washing it down with 32-ounce frost mug of Coors Light. Now, my issue there, Will, you have such a great lineup of food, and then you say a 32-ounce frosted mug of Coors Light. Will, Will, you got to improve the beer lineup there. I mean, look, all that food. I don't know what you're doing with that. Yikes! But hey,
never fills you up, sure to slow you down.
I mean, just not there with that. And appreciate all of you joining us tonight. Dark Ray says, "What up?" Matthew Anderson, 10 wins, baby. Well, we're going to talk about that. I don't know about that one. But let's get into our big question. Justin, you actually wanted to talk about this, and I'm going to just kind of lead you in and let you go with it. You wanted to talk about whether or not the Badgers were getting enough credit or respect, however you look at it, kind of from the overall national media. Just to kind of give some heads up quick, we did the rankings did come out officially a few weeks ago. The Badgers are finished to pick seventh in the finish seventh in the conference, behind Iowa, just ahead of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Justin, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on all of it? Not just necessarily the rankings there, but just going into the season, are the Badgers getting enough credit and respect?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a record situation for me per se. It's why are other teams that have, in my opinion, larger flaws being given the benefit of the doubt that Wisconsin's not? I feel like our floors for our defense and our offense are more defined than teams like Nebraska and Iowa, where there is an absolute chance with both of them that their offenses could be a free fall and they could absolutely cripple those teams. I don't feel like Wisconsin's going to be that level of struggle no matter what happens. Like Van Dyke is just too good for that. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to be a lights out player, but he's at least a solid quarterback that can go out there and lead an offense. And I don't know if either of those teams have that right now. And I look at it and it's like, well, they're glossing over. Well, Iowa may be a dark horse playoff team. Okay. What if their defense regresses from great to even good? They could be a 6-6 team if the offense stinks. Like, it's really easy to look at it and be like, you guys are making it seem like there's no way that anything can go wrong for them, but Wisconsin can have all these things go wrong in their situation. And it's kind of like, well, why? Why is it only Wisconsin that can have these situations that go negatively?
Let me just I want to push back on one thing that you mentioned about the offense. Like, our offense did kind of fall off a cliff last year. I mean, we averaged 23 points a game. Like, that's pretty bad.
Oh, it absolutely did.
So when you look at our schedule and you look at everything that we're seeing, like, and I know we're not just talking about record, and I hear you on that, but I do think that we're obviously always more optimistic than anyone out from outside of the program, just for in general, except Wisconsin basketball, Justin. But I think that, like, there is some cause for why people are questioning it, because we are having our second straight year of a transfer quarterback. He did have not the greatest last couple years in Miami. And there's still a lot of question marks, right? I mean, there's based on the excitement level we had going into last year and what the result was, I almost feel like I get it. And I'm not saying that they were going to have anything like that. I think our offense is going to be far improved, but I do kind of see why you're getting these takes from people saying, well, Wisconsin's offense is really unproven. And I think that's fair. You obviously, you think that, I feel like you think Tyler Van Dyke's floor is a little higher than maybe I do, even though I think the ceiling might be higher, but I am a little concerned about the floor of that offense still.
Do you feel that for either Nebraska or Iowa that they can replicate what Van Dyke did last year at quarterback? I don't think either one of them can.
But I think Iowa's defense is so far superior to what ours and Nebraska's is, frankly.
But we're making this point that, well, Wisconsin's offense can't get better, but yet we're also assuming that Iowa's defense doesn't regress at all, even though they lost a transcendent player from their secondary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that they won't be good because I think they will actually be really good yet, but I do think that there is a risk there, given some of those games that they played last year that they won, that were complete like just slogs. They don't have the room for error to have this, and at some point it's going to catch up to them. They're going to lose a couple of games to teams that aren't great simply because a play will break here or there that ends up being a touchdown. And now suddenly they have no way to make up for it because their offense stinks.
Hey,
Can I jump in here, Rajeev?
Yeah, I'm going to turn it to you just a second. I didn't think they had a room for air either until Deacon Hill continued to just find ways to win. Nick, give me your take on this.
Yeah, but you can't rely on that.
Yeah.
Well, here's a couple of things, man. Honestly, guys, I think all of that was really like fair and well thought out. I think Justin, as much as I'd like to say, yeah, Iowa can't keep winning that type of way, man, that's one of the easier schedules you are going to see out there.
I won't argue that.
That hits me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that defense, I agree, they're going to miss Cooper, obviously. But, you know, I follow Iowa stuff still a decent amount, obviously having been there for a couple years in that state. Sounds like other guys are stepping up. I think of Wonkpa at safety and other guys. Like, I think they're going to be legit. I do think their offense is still going to be pretty bad. Maybe not the worst in the country, but I do think pretty bad there. And I actually think there's a little bit more maybe up in the air questions for Nebraska's offense. Because who's to say, like, I do think their defense is going to be really good, but who is to say the transition there out in Lincoln offensively is going to be really smooth? So I'm with you on that. I think they're kind of tracking to be one of those, like, Cinderella type picks, you know, media favorites right now to overachieve. So I'm with you on that. I personally, guys, having been in the media a little bit, I don't think enough people are talking about Wisconsin's defense. The story is year 2 of Fickle. The story is TBD's coming in. But, like, I'm fortunate to be there almost every day. I don't think there's a legitimate potential weakness in the defense. Is it going to be elite at every level? Like, sure, maybe run defense can be tougher here and there, but I just don't think that's kind of getting out there to the outside because there's maybe not that, like, quote unquote, sexy first round pick name, or they're coming off a tough year. But, like, there are 4, 5, or 6 NFL players on that defense, guys. And I don't think a lot of people out there know that.
Well, we've got to see it, right? I mean, that's the thing with this team. I'm going to get through some comments. We've got some really good comments in here that Justin, I think, started as well. Christopher Gerber says they've got to earn their respect back by beating a couple top 25 teams this year. It's been a while. Zach says, I agreed with Christopher. We need to earn that respect, not just expect it. We need to beat some top teams to earn that respect back. And Steve Kneebone says, I believe the pollsters feel we will lose to the Big Four plus Iowa and maybe another loss at Rutgers or Nebraska. That's interesting. We're going to talk about that when we go through it next week. And I want to put this one up there, guys, as well. And then I want to get your take on this, Justin. JP says, any national show doing a preview doesn't even mention us in a second tier. They talk about Iowa, Penn State, Nebraska, etc. We're being slept on. JP obviously agrees with you. And I think for a point, and Nick, I agree with you with the defense is being slept on. But last year, we were somewhat confident going in about our defense, and we kind of got gashed on the ground. So I need to see the rush defense really start to, get stout up front and let the linebackers do their thing for me to be really excited about that defense. But from everything that you've obviously been writing about, Ryan was saying on his shows that he was at practice, and of course what Justin saw when he was there, the defense does look pretty good. But I mean, I agree. I think we are kind of being slept on, but honestly, normally I get upset about that kind of stuff. Like, don't disrespect my team. But I'm like, you know what? Go ahead. Because I love hearing people in Minnesota act like they're really good, which is complete nonsense. I think Nebraska is just, I don't think they're there yet. I think Iowa is going to be a better team. And let's be honest, Deacon Hill isn't going to be their quarterback this year. That's a huge step up. Okay. I mean, just it's that simple with it.
Yeah, I guess I don't see a significant difference in terms of talent overall between us and Iowa. Their schedule is easier, which is going to definitely be a factor in it. But when people sit there and talk about us potentially losing to Nebraska or any of the other, like Rutgers or whoever, it's like, well, yeah, you could make that same argument then for Iowa because they're in that same area, and all it takes is a couple of plays. They don't have the room. They're like old Wisconsin. they had games that we got stung because we just weren't inept offensively and couldn't separate from teams. Iowa's worse offensively than we were back in those days, and at one point it's going to happen. Like, it just hasn't. Last year they kind of had good luck with it where they didn't really get stung by it. At some point that coin's going to flip, and it's going to end up being like 2 or 3 that they probably should have won that they end up losing. And you look at and go, well, what the heck happened? Well, it's like, well, it's pretty obvious. They offensively can't separate from these teams enough to get away, and the teams made a few plays down the stretch.
I will note, because I like the point you made, Rajeev. You know, obviously speaking from the fans' perspective as well, I don't see a ton of people like, you know, up in arms, like, oh my gosh, we're totally getting disrespected. I will note, I thought that the spot on the top 25, like I think Wisconsin was like the 3rd team out receiving votes. So like 28, 29. That feels fair based on last year and because people haven't seen things, if that makes sense. However, there's not really a doubt in my mind from what I have seen this last, we'll say, 5-6 months, that this is a top 25 team. But I get fans, people needing to see, yeah, you got to take down a USC, an Iowa on the road, a Penn State. And you guys know, I look forward to predictions, you know, tonight or next week or whenever. I think they do get some of those done.
Yeah, I think so too, and that's what we'll go into. And I think there is a lot of that. We're going to win some of those big games, but we're going to lose some games that we don't want to lose, because I think the Big Ten, I personally think the Big Ten is better. Justin and I slightly disagree on the quality of the conference, which we're going to find out. We'll see what happens, but it's a fair point. Now, Nick, the question I have for you before we move on to our next segment, Justin and I will do this next week, but tell us where you think the Badgers finish. Like, the media has us currently finishing 7th. All right. That was the Big Ten media announcement that, you know, so let me just quickly go through that again. It was a few weeks ago. We were out of the top 25 for the first time in a while, preseason. Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State kind of tie for 3rd, USC, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Washington, Rutgers, and who cares about the rest. But where do you think Wisconsin finishes, Nick?
And I just want to clarify, it doesn't even necessarily mean that, you know, I think they're that level team in the Big Ten, because this schedule's a gauntlet. So Ohio State, Oregon, I think are up there. They're damn good, and neither schedule is actually that hard. I know the toughest game for each team is when they face each other. I'm a little bit down on Michigan, but their schedule's still not crazy hard. Not high on USC.
Michigan's actually is low-key hard. It might not be terrible in the Big Ten, but that Texas game kind of throws a wrench into
true. Just thinking, Big Ten record and comparing to Wisconsin.
Oregon and Ohio State, I think that they have 3 losses basically locked in, baked in to start the season, and it's a matter of, do they cough up one more?
I mean, I would
probably say around 5.
5. Wow. Okay. I mean, look, you're right about the top 2. Let's be honest. That's no one's touching that. The next grouping of Michigan, and I'm going to put Michigan in this group because I agree Michigan is going to be a bit down this year. Michigan, Penn State, USC, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska. And I'm going to put Rutgers in that tier too, because I think that's the next tier of like, okay, we don't really know where people are going to finish. I'm not saying Rutgers is going to finish 3rd. I'm saying
no. I respect that.
Is where we are right now. I think that any of those teams, what I mean by the tier is the standings is a crapshoot. Of those teams I just listed, we really don't know. I'm interested to see how this finishes, because I think we could definitely see Wisconsin finishing as high as 3rd, potentially. We could see Wisconsin finishing 7th or 8th. We could see Nebraska being up there. We could see Iowa being 3rd. We could see Iowa finishing 8th. I mean, I just think that any of those teams kind of can move about that particular grouping. And then I think the rest are at the bottom. But Justin, you disagree?
No, Rajeev. Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, yeah.
I disagree with Rutgers potentially being up there. Any team that's starting Ethan Kaliak-Manis is not going to be in the top 5 in the Big Ten.
Don't sleep on Rutgers, Justin. Don't sleep on Rutgers. I've been saying it.
They're not going to do anything offensively. They're a lot like Iowa with a worse defense.
They can run the rock.
Running back in the league,
and they have a tougher. They got what? That
doesn't matter
if there's no passing threat. It's not like they have the number 1 offensive line in the league.
I'm not saying they're going to win the
down last year.
I'm not saying they're going to
And
win.
our defense was pretty mediocre last year. Like by Wisconsin standards, it was bad.
Nick, what are your thoughts?
I was just going to say, I respect Rajeev for actually mentioning that about Rutgers, because obviously a lot of what I do is recruiting. I understand that does not translate to 2024, but like they're doing some things out there. I like their defense. I like the run game. Hear you, Justin, on the quarterback. I really do. And I would certainly like have Wisconsin well above Rutgers, but with the crapshoot, and I want to say that their over under was like 6.5, 7, I believe, which is right around Wisconsin's. Like, I think they're doing a nice job.
Their schedule is far easier.
100%. Yep. So I'm cool with that. Michigan, yeah, you're right, Justin. Not an easy schedule by any means. Penn State, they're at like, you got to show me at this point. You know you're going to get talent. You know you're going to defend. They've got crazy good running backs. We'll see what Franklin does in big games. But a lot of talent there. And then, yeah, I'd put this Wisconsin group right up there.
I mean,
so obviously I don't think it's going to play out this way, but I do think there is a oddball chance that Wisconsin could be one of the teams in the Big Ten championship game. And that's simply because one of their tough games is from out of conference. So if you somehow beat Penn State and you beat USC, if you only lose to Oregon and somehow find a way to beat Iowa, you have one loss. And the other two are going to play each other head to head, Oregon and Ohio State, which will probably kick one of them out. Because if they go head to head, we don't play. Well, actually, no, that would be weird. How does that play out? If Ohio State beats Oregon, we lose to Oregon, we don't play Ohio State. I guess we would be out because Oregon would have the head to head on us, tiebreaker. But yeah,
I don't know all those.
It's complicated.
I don't
know, and I don't know what the new Big Ten tiebreakers are.
What is Oregon's big non-con game?
Do they have
one? Know, or do they even have one
this year?
I know that some of the like big dogs are doing some this year, like Texas, Michigan. So I figured I'd
ask. That's on, by the way. Like within the next 3 to 5 years, those will be completely off the table.
Yeah,
no one will risk it.
Oregon doesn't have any big. They're non-con. Idaho, Boise State, and Oregon State technically is a non-con for them now, of course. But yeah, so I mean, look, I think that I'm just going to give you a little sneak preview of next week. I'm going to pick us to lose to Rutgers. I'm telling you that right now. Next week, I'm going to do that. But I don't think we're going to lose the big games because I've said multiple times all summer, you've heard me say our biggest games are at home.
Did you just say we're going to lose to Rutgers?
I did say I'm going to be picking Rutgers loss next week. I'm sneak previewing next week. I'm going to pick us to lose to Rutgers. I'm doing that. Because look, listen, I'm telling you, road games are scary. Now, I think our home games are home games. And I think that when we face the Penn States of the world, at the Alabamas of the world, we go to USC. There are games where I'm going to surprise you with who I'm going to say we're going to win. But I'm telling you right now, sneak peek, I'm going to pick us to lose to Rutgers. I have been saying that. I've been saying all summer that is a game that scares the crap out of me on our schedule because nobody's giving them any respect. And Greg Schiano is a really good coach. He's putting together a heck of a program.
I'm not giving him any respect. If we play to our base level, we will beat them by 10 points. We have to play poorly for them to beat us. That's the only way we lose that game. If we play to our B level, we win.
We can do that. We can play poorly, especially on the road.
Yeah, they have to play well. It's all right.
Right. Fair enough. Alien
I
Space
love when you guys go back and forth.
Christopher says no
We're
way.
Better than last year, and we still beat them by 10 last year or 7?
I want to be wrong. Obviously, I'm just telling you. Like, I guess my point is we're not going to win all the games we're expected to win. That's not going to happen. So that's the thing. I'm going to pick one of them, and that's the one I'm picking. But go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say, but by that logic, you could say that about literally every team in the Big Ten. Like, you could say that about Iowa's schedule, that they could have multiple games that they.
I mean, look, am I right
win that they don't?
Am I right that would you guys agree that we're probably going to lose a game we shouldn't?
I think if Luke Fickell is who they brought in, then they shouldn't lose those games.
I mean, I don't.
Old Wisconsin didn't lose those games against teams that they should beat, and that's the floor for what I expect from him as a coach. Is you need to come in and at least you better be beating the teams that you should.
I don't expect to lose to games like Indiana Northwestern again. I'll tell you that. But I just
here's
think
my question, Rajeev. Is at Nebraska a game we should win type, or
that to me is a middle ground game? I do expect us to win that game, but I think that's going to be one of those games where, like, to be honest, and it depends on what happens. Like, Nebraska's schedule is pretty weak, so they are likely going to be favored in that game. Now we're going to be favored at Rutgers. I think we will be, and that's why I'm saying I feel like that we're going to slip up in one of those games we're going to be favored in. Are we going to win games we're not favored? Yes, we're definitely going to win games we're not favored in.
The FPI actually has Rutgers as the favorite, so I wouldn't be shocked if that is a close spread.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, but so we're going to kind of continue on with our season preview and get back to one of our original good old segments from last season.
Weekly Superlatives.
We're going to do season preview edition of Weekly Superlatives. We got some fun ones. We got some serious ones. They're all serious, but we're going to start with them. I'll start with Justin on these, and then we'll kind of just go around the horn a little bit, going through some superlatives as we approach the season, which, guys, we're like 12 days away. That is fantastic. I just cannot believe it. See, fall is a great time. The NFL's coming, preseason's going on. The Premier League, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of, that just started. So lots of good going on. Justin, let's start here. Biggest surprise player of the season. When it's all said and done, who are you going to look back and be like, wow, that was a big surprise?
Let me throw one out here. Let's say, man, there's a lot of guys that I don't know if they necessarily figure to be a surprise. I am going to say Austin Brown.
Okay.
I think he's going to be really good on the back half. I know people have said Preston Zachman may end up getting that spot. I think Austin Brown's just a better athlete at that position, and I trust him more.
Nick?
Am I allowed to give two at the same position?
You can give two.
Okay. Normally I won't, but for this one, because I was torn, I just have to go by what I've seen. And so I think it is going to be Kurt Neal, or Elijah Hills.
Ooh.
Okay.
Again,
Elijah Hills would definitely fit that category.
I loved the addition of Hills. I don't remember saying a bunch of standout stuff about him in the spring, but I'm going to use a term from my guy Justin here. He pops a little bit. Mm-hmm. He pops a little bit when seeing him live. He's got quick feet, active hands, good leverage. We'll see what he can do in the run game. Obviously, maybe there will be some other guys in the interior there, but I like that IDL spot for the Saints.
So for me, I'm going to go I'm also going to name kind of two, but I think that the surprise is how well they're going to do when they're forced to play. And one of the things that we've always talked about is O-line depth, right? That's a problem. You look at the two deep, you got three freshmen sitting there in some two deeps that you've seen. So I think Kevin Haywood is going to be the biggest surprise player this season, because I think that they are. I agree. But what I'm saying is, to me, it's not really realistic to act like these guys, someone's not going to get injured. It's just going to happen. I don't think it's necessarily going to be Nelson, but I think a freshman O-lineman is going to be one of the biggest surprises of the season. I'm not saying it's definitely going to be Haywood, because it could very well be Mendel, on the other side potentially, or Kevin could play right tackle, but I'm going to go with Kevin Haywood, but one of these offensive linemen, because everyone kind of just assumes that if we lose one of these top guys, or potentially, or two of them, most definitely, that the O-line is going to kind of go in the tank. We've long talked about how impressed we are with some of these linemen, especially like Mandel and Haywood. And I think that is going to surprise people. So I'm going to go with the offensive lineman. I'm going to go with Kevin Haywood.
I don't necessarily know if that's going to be. I'll be curious what the staff would actually do in the case of an injury, because I'm not totally sold on they'll play the young guy. I think there'd be some reshuffling if that happened.
I mean, Ben Sewell is probably the next guy up, like as far as off the bench. He's going to play the guards, but he's not really going to play tackle though.
I feel like there's a chance that Malman might get slid to the left, and you'll put somebody else out at right tackle, and that might be the way that they handle it. Huber played right tackle, then they might put somebody in at guard, and that might be how you end up combating that, just because you have guys that you trust a little bit more to understand the situations.
Nick, we'll start with you on this one. Most receptions, and you can't use Pauling. So outside of Pauling, who gets the most receptions?
I'm changing my answer. I'm changing my answer from 25 minutes ago. I'm going to go with Tretch.
You're
That's
drinking
all
the
I'm
Justin
going to go with
Kool-Aid.
Tretch. I'll pass it over to JJ.
There's only one answer. It's Tretch.
I mean,
listen, I like Green. I think that he's going to have a few more catches this year than last. I think he'll actually be more productive in terms of his secondary stats. But I just think that the way this offense works, that it works through the slot. And I think that Tretch is going to get his opportunities. Look at it last year. Even with all the drops and with not playing the entire season, your boy that was in the slot opposite of Pauling ended up being almost the second receiver last year.
he also led the team in drops, so we don't talk
That's
about
what I'm saying.
But
So the opportunities are there is more or less what I'm saying.
No, I mean, you're
He's
right.
a legitimate weapon with the ball in his hand.
I mean, slot. It is a slot-heavy offense, no doubt. Let's get a few comments in here before I give mine. I want to go back to the other one really quickly. Alien Space said Xavier Lucas definitely could be a surprise player because of the fact that he is a freshman.
Some reps.
Alien Spaces, I got Brandon Lane, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Bill Woj, we like this guy. Bill Woj, we met him in Madison last year. He says, surprise, Zachman will be better than Wohler. I don't think so, Bill. Yeah. But I will say that you've heard me say I love Preston Zachman. I think he does get that starting job. I think he has a huge impact on this team this year. I said that last week on Locked On. Yeah, I think that's fair. And then some of the other questions the one question that you guys have already answered, of course, Bill Woj says Tretch. Evans says Tretch easily. Alien Spaces, how about Joseph Griffin or Green? So I'm going to officially say Tretch because I agree with you on the slot happy offense. However, I really wanted to say Green because I think Green is going to have a big year. He will be our boundary guy that I think he finally I was really high on him coming into last year. I think he finally turns into the player that we thought we were getting last year, just that possession guy. He's not going to burn her. He's not going to beat you down the field, but he is going to be that possession receiver that will go up, high point the ball, and bring it down. But I'm still going to go with Tretch just because, come on. Let's be honest.
I say just real quick, super quick. I think as of right now, it will be Zachman that's in that spot. And I'm with you, Rajeev. I think he has a big year. If he's better than Wohler, though, you're talking about him becoming a first or second round draft pick because Wohler is flying up the draft board this offseason.
So on those same sort of lines, we go to our next one, most tackles outside of Wohler. Justin,
Mm-hmm.
where are you going with most tackles outside of Hunter Wohler? Because, Hunter Wohler is going to be a leading tackler. Sorry.
I got a good one.
I got two of them because I'm not sure which one of them is going to end up. It's either going to be Chaney or it's going to be Jaheim Thomas. I'm going to say Jaheim Thomas because I think he'll be used in more opportunities. And I think that if you're going to pull somebody, it's probably going to be Chaney over him. Just because.
I hate how similarly he and I always think, man. Yeah, I got Jaheim Thomas. Chaney's looked awesome, but I just feel like you saw the production in the SEC. I've had Jaheim Thomas as a standout 3, 4, 5 days. I think that translates to Saturdays.
Yeah, this is a clean sweep here. Jaheim Thomas is what I have as well. I think that he is going to be the best linebacker on our team, especially on the inside. The outside, we'll see who kind of emerges. But yeah, I think Jaheim Thomas is a huge transfer portal ad for us.
Dude.
All right, so Nick, we'll start. Oh, go ahead, Justin.
I want to follow up on that and say, I think that we're going to see Wohler have a better season, but I think his tackle numbers are going to plummet this season simply because the athleticism of the rest of the defense has increased so much that he's not going to be required to have to clean up as much as what he was required last year. If he is anywhere near 100 tackles again this year, that says more about the quality of the defense than it does about him being a playmaker, because he actively had to make plays last year to clean up other guys' messes. And I think that that's something that ideally we don't see again.
Yeah, there was actually a good comment on that. I wanted to put that up there. Cujo says, I hope Wohler isn't our leading tackler. It means we're getting screwed up front. Yeah, good point. That's basically just what Justin
Seriously, good thought.
All right, so next one, Nick, we'll lead off with you on this one. This little fun one here. Longest made kick of the year. So, we haven't recently had the best special teams, but it's at the end of the year, longest made field goal. How many yards is it, Nick?
It helps my thought here that I think the offense is going to be better. I think more sustained drives. I think more touchdowns. This isn't crazy long, but it's a good number for sure. I'm going to say 53 yards.
53 yards. I'm going a little bigger. I feel like he's got quite the leg, and it wasn't really there last year. Got injured a little bit, but I'm going to go 55. I think we'll have one over 50. It's going to be a long one. We're going to end the drive, right around like the 40, 39, 38 yard line, and we're going to go for it. 55 is my pick. Justin?
I'm going 52. I think there'll be something like the end of the half or something where we'll pull up and just pull one up.
All right, I'm going to start this one first. 4th down conversion percentage. Last year, we were woefully low, 25%. It was really bad. We were 5 of 20 on 4th down. So I loved what I've been reading about, and we talked about it a couple times on the show about Luke Fickell, how contact practice is, he's really focusing on that this year with tackling, with ball control, things like that. And I think that those live reps are gonna come into play in this regard as well. We need to be tougher in short yardage situations. That is a Wisconsin staple, and it's something that I don't want to accept as a fan for us not to have a great short yardage situation. And I think that another year of Longo, we're getting a little better with this. I think this is a big dramatic increase for me. And I think it goes up to around 50%. I think we're going to hit 50% of our 4th down conversions, which is a good number. I mean, I wish it was a little bit higher, but that's a big increase. The last year, again, was woefully bad. We can't have that happen again. Justin, your thoughts?
That's actually exactly where I was thinking. I think it doubles. We get roughly in the 50 range, which is a big deal for this team. Because I do think that if the offense is good, Fickell will take some chances on some 4th and 3s, 4th and 4s, if we're in no man's land, just putting some trust in the offense that they'll get things done. And sometimes we'll get burned by it. But yeah, I think that it will be significantly better than last year, but I think that it's not going to be like lights out because we're not going to be in a lot of 4th and 1s.
All right. I gotta go a little bit off just because I want to be different. So my original number was 50 as well. We're always thinking the same, but I feel damn good about this team in short yardage. I think there will be, I love Coach Fickell talking about like basically being, when to be aggressive, but not to be stupid. I think there's going to be more trust in that kicking game, special teams. So I don't think it's going to be a crazy high amount of attempts, but I'm going to go 60%.
I hope so. I mean, look, we know the offensive line plays a big role, and obviously that they play the biggest role in this. And we're all pretty confident about this first. The one line of the O line should be very strong. Mm-hmm. I put up a comment earlier from Bill Woj saying about, this nonsense about shotguns. I really hope we get under center a little bit in these short yardage situations. Let's move the pocket. Let's get things going. All right, Nick, we'll start with you on this one. Most valuable assistant coach at the end of this season. Who will looking back? Who will have been the most valuable assistant coach?
So not like coordinator, right? Just
I'm sorry, coordinator. Yes, coordinator. I was trying to say basically. Well, it can be coordinator. It can be coordinator if you want. I'm okay with that.
I think that'd be too easy, just between O or D. So I'm gonna say,
let's go position coach. Let's say no coordinator, position coach only.
This is a phenomenal question, Rajeev. I personally am gonna go with Coach Blazek, offensive line, AJ Blazek. I think, look, what I saw, guys, these last few days, the push in the run game, that looked like the Badgers that I've seen, that I grew up with. Hell of a push. Really good. I think, hey, you knock on wood that everybody will be healthy, but throughout a season, that depth will be tested. I think that he will have some challenges in terms of, shuffling things around, or maybe a young guy's got to come up. And I expect him to ultimately find a lot of success. I think this line is going to be really good. Top 3 or 4 line in the conference. I'll go with Coach Blazek.
Justin.
I was going to say the same one. I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to say Whitlow. And I'm going to say it's going to be because we're going to see growth over what we had last year, and it's going to prove that the defensive line is going to be less of a concern than what we originally expected to start the season.
Okay, that's good. I was between a couple. I'm going to end up going with Matt Mitchell here. I'm going to go with the outside linebacking crew. He also does special teams. I feel like this is to me, it's one of the areas that we needed to see the most growth from last year to this year. We did it as far as the recruiting. I want to see on the field now because our outside linebacker play was, frankly, just in my opinion, one of the biggest gaps and holes we had on our team last year in the way we played. That can't happen again. And I'm very confident that Mitchell's going to make we've brought in the right guys. He's got the personnel now. And I feel like it's time to really make a step. I want to see proper pass rush. I want to see sideline to sideline speed. We've got the players to do that. So I'm going to go Matt Mitchell. Let's get some comments here. Will Hanna says, yes, me and Rajeev agree. Let's have another Coors. Man, I tell you with the Coors, you got to be kidding me. Evan Gabriel says Kenny Guyton. I think Kenny Guyton is, we didn't really mention, obviously, the wide receivers, very good. Bill Walsh is easy. Blazek, I mean, I think that's fair. Blazek is definitely a guy that's going to be common. Let's go next one here. Justin, we'll start with you on this one. Most exciting newcomer. This can be a freshman. This can be a transfer portal. This could be anyone who was not on the roster last year.
All right. Can I just put two of them in a steel cage, death cage match and have Dupree and Tretch? Winner take all? Because I'm going to say it's Tretch simply because he'll get more opportunity. But if I had to pick out of the two of those guys, I think they're on the same tier. I
don't think you can say Tretch because Tretch was on the roster last year.
All right.
Okay. No,
okay. Well, I mean, he's a newcomer in terms of actually
fair, but I mean new to the team.
Then it's Darian Dupree to me.
Okay.
Nick? I've got John Pius.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I love Dupree's game, but guys, I'm telling you that backfield, it might be the deepest in the country. I'm not saying it's got the star power of everybody, but just 1 through 6, 1 through 7. So, reps could be hard to come by. I like Pius, man. What he's done with his body this offseason, what he's flashed in the pass rush, the excitement around his game. I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, I'd go Pius or TBD.
I mean, for me, it is Jaheim Thomas. He is a most exciting newcomer because that dude is going to be laying some serious wood out there. I'm very excited to see what the linebacking core does. And I think you mentioned earlier, Nick, playing in the SEC let's just be honest, it's a different brand. It's about the same brand as the Big Ten, but a lot of the other guys we brought in, especially in the linebacking room, they weren't playing in the SEC. None of them were. And I think that is something that doesn't get talked about enough. He is really bringing some serious experience. And so I'm going to go with Jaheim Thomas on this one. All right, Nick, let's start with you on this one. Closest game of the year. Closest game of the year. What do you think is our best, tightest game we're going to be in?
Truly awesome question, man. I'm just going to give one. I could give several, but this is one that as I've done my season projections, I still don't know how I'm going to go with it. Iowa.
Okay. Justin, he says Iowa. What say you?
I'm going to say Penn State. That game has 24-21 written all over it.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I wanted to say Alabama or Oregon just because I wanted to say that, but let's be honest, I don't feel like that.
If we win that game, it's going to be because we have a couple of things go our way. I think they have to score in that game, and it may be close. It may end up being close, but it needs to play out a lot like when we took down Ohio State. Like you have to get up big quick and then hold them off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I actually think the answer for me, I'm going to go USC.
Nice.
Because I think that USC is a really interesting game on the schedule. First of all, I'm going to be there. I can't wait for that. But also because USC's defense, obviously they got a new coordinator. We did a Know Your Foe series on them. We talked about USC. They're always going to have a good offense. Let's be honest. Lincoln Riley is Lincoln Riley. That's just what it is. But their defense last year was pretty bad. And stepping into the conference, the physicality of the Big Ten, things are going to be different for them. And I think the national media is definitely going to pick us to lose that game, or we are not going to be favored there. But I'm another spoiler for next week. I'm picking us to win at USC. And I think that that's going to be a very close game. But our defense will be the reason that we end up winning that game. But yeah, I think USC is the closest game of the year. I'm very excited to see how our brand of football in the Big Ten mixes with the Pac-12's USC brand of football.
If Miller Moss isn't who he was against Louisville, they could be in for a very rough season.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a non-zero percent number that Wisconsin goes in there, and if they can just make him uncomfortable and control them on offense, that game could get ugly because of the fact that I just don't trust their defense to be good. And
this
if Moss isn't Caleb Williams,
this is a red letter day. Justin's optimism is through the roof right now. I don't know.
I don't like USC. I really do. I think that there's so much like they're putting a level of like expectation on Moss that I'm just like, they played a team that had like half its people like check out for the draft in Louisville and he gutted them. Okay. But that he hasn't played anybody when it actually mattered. And I just don't see it with that team. Like I think unless the defense is significantly better, I think they're in trouble.
If I could say I'm more with Rajeev that I think that offense is going to be good. I actually do think Miller Moss is pretty good. He's not Caleb Williams. He's not, some of those OU quarterbacks. But I have questions on that defense because even though they made some damn good staff additions, I don't see the personnel there yet.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in a couple of transfer portal guys from UCLA as well. But I agree. I agree with you there. All right, last one, fun one here. I'm going to go first on this one. Percentage of the student section filled at the Alabama kickoff. Now, this is an early kick. It's 11 a.m. local time kick. I blame the students, but I also blame the system because I was a student at this university. I remember the old system, the very old system where you actually had tickets that you got the week before, the week of it on a Wednesday. And I was one of those guys camping out at Kohl Center.
Why don't they just set up an online ticket office and have everyone click?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like I understand there's a lot of differing opinions on how it's going to go, and I do think the improvements hopefully will be made soon. But I'm going to give the students a benefit of the doubt on this one. I think it's going to be like, this is Alabama. I don't care if it's 11 a.m. This is Alabama coming to Camp Randall. We need to display the best atmosphere possible. I'm going to go 70%, which is pretty high for the student section at Camp Randall Stadium because it's generally in like the 20s. So, Justin, what is your answer here? Percentage of students?
I'm going to say it's 25%. Just be honest.
Oh, no.
I don't think it's going to be because people aren't trying to get in. I think it's going to be that, like, people are going to be there ready to try and get in, and it's just going to take forever. Like, by the midpoint of the first quarter, it will be full or close to full.
Nick?
Man, I like this Evan Gabriel. We've had the same answer on like 2 or 3 of these. I got 65. I don't think it's going to be 80, 90. Justin, it's bad if it's only in the 20-something. So I'm going to go with 65, man.
I mean, let's just hope that's not the case.
I'm trying to remember how full it was when we were at Ohio State. It
was about 80%, 80 plus.
Was that high?
Yeah. Okay. It was in a good spot.
That's a night game.
Yeah.
I mean, night games are different. Night games are just different, right? They open the stadium maybe a little earlier, who knows? But that's a different feel to it. One of our opponents this year that we're going to highlight today in the last few minutes of our show is Purdue. We skipped over Purdue because I completely lost my train of thought, and we went right to Penn State. But Purdue is one of our first. It's earlier in the season. It's a home game. Last year, so head coach Ryan Walters, this is his second year at Purdue. They averaged 24 points a game last year. Similar to us, but they gave up almost 30 and a half. They do have Hudson Card back for a year or two. He had 15 touchdowns, 8 interceptions last year through for just under 2,400 yards. This team did make 14 portal additions, and there are some critical ones. They've got a couple guys from Georgia, the wide receiver CJ Smith, cornerback Nyland Green. I've talked to a couple different Purdue podcast hosts. I'm from Lafayette, Indiana, so I have a lot of friends who went to Purdue. One of my oldest friends is a huge diehard Purdue Boilermaker fan, and he also said that Nyland Green was his sort of top transfer guy. So on offense, they've got Devin Mockabee, great running back, of course, out of the backfield, receiver. They also added Reggie Love III from Illinois. That's someone that we've certainly played against as well. They lost a couple key transfers, Deion Burks, wide receiver, being one of them. They brought in some transfer wide receivers. Their O-line's pretty decent. They've got Gus Hartwig and Marcus Mbow. They're two kind of top linemen, but they, again, brought in more transfer additions there. Defensively, they lost Nick Scourton, who was their top pass rusher. He left for A&M. They're kind of sort of the guy that people are looking to for the future, Dylan Tieneman. He was an all-conference as a freshman safety. They did add a couple portal cornerbacks, as I mentioned. One thing I will say, they had the worst field goal kicking in America last year, 8 of 17 of field goal kicking, like really, really bad. But they've got a decent team. Now, this is a team that we've beat 17 straight years. I said on last week's show that one of the reasons I feel like that keeps happening is because we always tend to we run the ball late in the third and fourth quarter. They can't ever seem to stop our run when they need to, even though they have had NFL defensive linemen. They've had a lot of good players go through that school, but we've beaten them a lot. And I think we're going to obviously have to happen again here at Camp Randall. Justin, and you're looking at Purdue. What do you think about this team?
I think they will look better this year. I think we still win that game comfortably. And by comfortably, that could just be double digits. Like it might be 10 points, something like 31-17 or 27-17, something like that.
Yeah. I like hearing some of those details, Rajeev, because when I thought about the portal with them, obviously you knew who they lost. I knew who they were bringing back. I forgot about some of that talent from Georgia. So a couple nice additions, but I'm with Justin, man. I mean, I think Card's a decent player, but I think this defense is going to give him fits. They will miss Burks. I would have Wisconsin winning that game here in Madison around like a 28-10 type score, quite honestly.
That's true.
I mean, I certainly hope that's the case. And I think that Purdue, now they were picked 18th, by the way, in the Big Ten by the media. They're dead last, which I think is just wrong. I think Hudson Card, this is a team that I know Ryan Walters is a new coach, but Purdue is the team that has beat Ohio State more than anyone else has, by the way, other than Michigan in the last like 15 years. Like Purdue has had big games. They absolutely can. They can get things done. No, I don't think we're going to lose to them this year, but I think that they're going to surprise people. My good friend who I talked to, again, I texted earlier about this kind of stuff. He said he put the floor at 2 wins and the ceiling at like around 6 wins, which I feel like is probably about right. They have a tough schedule. They have really tough schedule. A lot of their easier games are on the road. Their harder games are at home. They've got their Big Ten home slate is Nebraska, Oregon, Northwestern, and Penn State. Their Big Ten road slate is Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Like that, they are not going to win a lot of games. They also, by the way, play Notre Dame and Oregon State in the non-con at Oregon State.
Can somebody explain to me why you have teams like Purdue that get schedules like this, and yet we can't get Nebraska or Iowa to have anybody more than one decent team on their schedule?
They will. The schedule's obviously the schedule will
I'm
be
waiting for the season where they have more than one tough game their entire freaking
the schedule will always be evened out eventually over time. It's just going to be that when that happens.
Because Wisconsin has had tougher schedules than them literally every year for like the last 10.
Obviously now with the new shift, that's all going to change. But it's what's going to happen is the year that they actually do get those games, they're going to be really good or something like that. It's just going to stink for us, however you cut it up. But I do think Purdue is not a team that we can't sleep on anybody. Okay, this team's not sleeping on anybody. After what I saw last year with Indiana and Northwestern, we better not sleep on anybody, because watching us go down 21 points against Northwestern was heartbreaking. Watching us lose to Indiana was heartbreaking. This needs to be one of those games like Western Michigan, like South Dakota. I just think we need to get this done. We beat this team 17 straight years. That streak is going to end one of these years. It's not going to end this year. I think it will end somewhat soon in West Lafayette. I'm sure they'll get us at home one of these years. But no, this is not the one. But I do, in general, with this team, don't sleep on them. I think this is probably a 4-win team again, maybe 5. Like they're going to beat some teams they probably shouldn't, but their schedule is absolutely brutal. and this team should not really be much of a problem for us.
Dude, that's a gauntlet. That's
it is a gauntlet.
toughest, other than the Gators, that's the toughest schedule I've heard of anybody.
Yeah, Purdue's schedule is absolutely. I mean, really, like, and honestly, like Notre Dame and Oregon State in the non-con, then Nebraska at Wisconsin, at Illinois, Oregon at home, Northwestern at home, at Ohio State, Penn State at home, at Michigan State, at Indiana. It sucks.
What's Iowa's toughest game? South Dakota.
Easy. Justin.
Oh my gosh! Look, I do think it's worth talking about that crazy Iowa schedule, because it is something that, like, and we're gonna do a Know Your Foe Iowa soon.
What is their toughest game, Rajeev, for real?
Well, for the longest time, we had the competitive balance scheduling, and that never stung them as much. Even when Iowa was effectively playing at the same level as Wisconsin, we always still had tougher schedules than them.
Iowa
I don't understand like what's going on here. Why it never seems like they get the top teams from the opposite side.
They're going to Ohio State. We're not doing that.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, like, you know,
we got Oregon, USC, and
they've got Minnesota. They're going at Minnesota, at Ohio State, home to Washington, at Michigan State, home to Northwestern, home to Wisconsin, at UCLA, at Maryland, home to Nebraska. It's not. I mean, they do have Ohio State. We don't, so we can't really say that. I mean, that's about Nebraska, but nonetheless. It should be a good season, though. And I think I do think Will Hannah says Bucky 35, Purdue 16. That's probably going to be what ends up happening with Purdue. All right, boys, we're 12 days away. Nick, thanks for joining us. Final thought from you, Nick, before we close the show. You know what? No, we're going to do one thing with you, Nick. Give me your season prediction. If you're okay with giving it right now, I mean, I'd like to hear your number. Justin and I will do it next week. Give me a number. Give me a win total for the Wisconsin Badgers this season.
Man, I'm always picky and choosy with this, but you guys are my guys. I will do one. I said it on the radio last week, so I'm not going to step back. You know what? I trust the tape. I trust what I've seen. I love Justin waiting with some bated breath. Floor 7 for me. Floor 7. Ceiling 11, but my pick was 9-3.
9-3, and I did have an 11-1 ceiling, but that's good. But you said 9-3. That's good, man. That would be one heck of a season.
I got 2 home losses. Bama, Oregon. Bama by like 3. I think that game's going to be incredible. Oregon, they've just done a really nice job with that roster. And then I'd probably. For me, I'd probably say the road loss. Yeah, I'm not going to go backwards. I mean, I'm not going to change from the show. I have said Iowa. I don't like USC, like what they're matching up in the Big Ten. Like Justin said, I don't know exactly what Nebraska's QB situation ends up looking like. With Iowa, you at least know kind of what their defense looks like. That's what I would say, guys. 9-3. I think they're going to make some noise in the Big Ten, and I think we're going to start to see all that excitement about this staff straight up.
The optimism is rolling from Nick Osen. And good, 9-3. Justin and I again will do ours.
Before we just say it, because I was thinking this actually this week, and it's not something that really reflects what my record is. If we get to 10 wins this year, and then Luke Fickell is a top 5 coach in the country, in my opinion. Based off of the fact that he has not really put together a full roster of his guys, and with the schedule they have this year, that would be an incredibly impressive second season to dive into with this group. I think if he ends up being in the 8-4, he could be a really good coach. That's just going to take time to build. But like coaches don't come into the situation that he had at Wisconsin and win 10 games against the schedule that we have without being an exceptional coach.
It would be magical if he won 10 games. I don't really see that happening.
It
this
is
year,
a gauntlet.
We will see. We will see. And we will have final predictions for you next week's show. Justin, final thoughts from you at all before we close the show?
Well, like you said, 12 days. I'm just counting down now. I'm just waiting for it. Like, I can't handle this. As a guy who screwed up watching Wrexham this weekend, now that the season started back up, and I'm like, oh, it's on Saturday. I can wake up and have my coffee. No, it was a Sunday game. So I've waited enough. I need my sports. Give it back to me.
It is coming. It will be here very, very shortly. Nick Osen from 247 Sports, thank you so much for your time as always. And tune in again next week. We'll do some a little more Know Your Foe and, of course, a full-on season preview. And with that, on Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.